Big play, big play.
A1. Throw me on ESPN, I'm today's big play. Throw me on Fox Sports, I'm today's big play. You can catch me on the news as today's big play. Big play, big play, big play, big play.
How y'all doing? Welcome back to A1 Forever Sports. Hey, you got to be generational because it's always time to be, and don't you settle for less because you always can have more with the vision. And with that in mind, man, you already know what it is. It's time to recap the Atlanta Hawks, the Road Warriors, man. Their 6-game road trip. They're coming back to Atlanta. Of course, the weather stopped them from playing the Houston Rockets. But instead of, having nothing to talk about, let's talk about this road trip. And with me, I got my brother T. Will for ATL, my ATL Sports One, and we got ATL in 29s. Glen Willis coming back to the show, joining us to have some Hawks conversation. Fellas, how you feeling? How you feeling on this icy Sunday in Atlanta? I know, Glenn, you're in a different area, but still, we got an icy Sunday still down here in Atlanta.
Yeah, I'm good, and I definitely recall my time in Atlanta. Grew up there and lived a good bit of my adult life there and things like that. When it snows, it gets crazy. Everybody runs to the store all at the same time and all that stuff. So hopefully, you guys are managing through all of that in these days.
Oh yeah, man. T. Will, what's going on, man?
Hey man, same old, same old. I was agreeing with Glenn because that's absolutely what happened. Look, if you didn't get to the store by Thursday, hey
It was
man,
over.
look, there was nothing left. So
It
same
was over.
thing going on, Glenn. Same thing. You know what it is. So.
As a matter of fact, Walmart was out of rock salt, I believe, since Friday. Like they were completely out of rock salt.
Yep.
So just people coming in buying it up. But yeah, man, fellas. Now the Atlanta Hawks, of course, we went 2-4 on this road trip. We definitely, would have liked to have at least a 500 record, but things happen, right? But for those fans who didn't watch the games or, not following the team as closely because, some fans are still into football, and I get that. But it's a lot of things that, happen on this road trip that we got to talk about. And if it's okay with you guys, I would like to start from the beginning so we can work our way up. And that started with that Toronto Raptors game. Briefly, just each game. One thing I would like to know from you guys going back to that Raptors game, which was a 136-107 blowout win for our Atlanta Hawks, and we were feeling good, taking care of business in Toronto, taking care of a team that you need to beat, that you should beat, that you're better than. But what was something that stood out from that particular game for you, Mr. Glenn? I'm gonna start with you, and then T. Will. I'm gonna roll around. This is something that stood out from those particular games that gave you a good, that make it like a feel good moment. Okay, the Hawks getting this win. Maybe we can do some things on the Western Coast, the Western Conference.
Yeah, I think for me the thing that is important is earlier in the season when especially they were dealing with injuries. Bad losses twice to the Wizards. They had some other bad losses. Lost to Detroit. Detroit's a better team now. I think we now know Detroit's a better team than maybe we thought they would be at the beginning of the season, and have to give them credit for the progress that they're making. But it's nice in that game to go see the Hawks just kind of be dominant against a team that they should be able to dominate in that situation. So if they're gonna maybe avoid the play-in here at the end of the season, they have to consistently win those games against the teams in the lower third of the league. And that was an example where they took it seriously, went out and took care of business, and got a win that they had to have.
Right. T. Will, what's your thoughts about that Raptors and Hawks game? Just something that may stood out to you.
That was Mr. Trae Young, sir. 34 points and 10 assists. And of course, Trae having a great year, scoring 22 points. So they can, again, to echo Glenn's sentiment, you came out and took care of business against a team that you should beat. And to Glenn's point, if we are going to do that and avoid a play-in, we're going to have to beat the teams that we should. Look, we've seen this team beat Boston. We've seen them beat Cleveland twice. They can run with anybody in the East. West, I don't know about after this trip, but they can definitely run with anybody in the East. So, again, let's take care of business against the teams that we need to. And, maybe we can surprise some folks. But that's my thoughts on that first game.
Yes, sir, man. For me, I know one thing that I was happy to see gave me confidence about, possibly going out there and competing against the Western Conference was not only the rebounds. We had 40 rebounds. Now, I want people to understand the reason why we lost the rebounding battle was because we were putting up more shots. I think, it was,
Right.
we had, I mean, my goodness, we had 22 steals that game,
Right.
so just that alone, the ball going the other way, you're going to definitely get up more shots. So I know, I was having a conversation with a buddy and he was like, man, we ain't even rebounding in this game. I said, man, we're putting up more shots than we, what else do you want, man? What else do you want? You want us to get everything to, we got 22 steals. That was just right there, was just incredible. I actually didn't even pay attention to that until like midway through the game. Almost when the game was getting closer to the end, when they had like 17. And I remember, I think Bob or Steve, I forgot what I was doing, how I was listening to it. But anyway, one of those gentlemen had said it was like 17 steals for the Hawks, and I was like, "Say what?" But again, Toronto is one of those teams you got to do that against. Yeah, they had Bruce Brown coming back, and I was worried about that because you know how it is. Guys trying to return against the Hawks and everything. We're going to get into that as well. I was kind of concerned about how it would be, but Bruce Brown, good piece. I can say good piece, but definitely not enough to make a factor against the Atlanta Hawks. Toronto doesn't have a lot to work with up there, I believe. So that was another thing that kind of helped, man. But after that, it seems like, man, we had to go play Jokic, and then we went and had to play the Lakers, and then the Clippers on the back-to-back. Those 3 games right there, we're gonna kind of get into all 3 of those at once because they had, I feel like, similar things that happened in them, and that was as far as like us getting out rebounded, us getting out hustled a little bit. But I mean, just against the Denver Nuggets, which was for the second time now. What did you guys see in this particular game? Because the Hawks, one thing about the Hawks, they fight and they continue to fight to try to keep it close. But against the Denver Nuggets, Glenn, what stood out to you as far as like what happened? Like just what happened in that particular game?
Yeah, I mean, for me, Jokic is unique, right? He's one of one in terms of the center, how diverse his skill set is, all the different things he can do, all the different ways he can attack you, makes it really tough. I mean, when you're navigating an NBA schedule and you have an outlier player like that in a position like that, how do you kind of game plan for that? In that way, he put up huge numbers. Even just in the first half, he had numbers that you would think would be a good game.
Right.
There, and then and Hawks playing at altitude. West Coast road trips are hard. Shorthanded, and when anybody is missing, at the 4 or the 5 position, it's hard for the Hawks to kind of put enough size on the floor. And against Denver, that's an example where you have to have a lot of size on the floor to kind of have multiple defenders that can maybe impact Jokic. And the Hawks just, have to be fully healthy to have enough size to be able to deploy the power forward center positions. And that was something they weren't able to do in that game.
Right. What did you got to say, T. Will? What your thoughts about the Nuggets versus the Hawks?
Mama, there goes that man again. Like Glenn said, dude is he's an outlier. I mean, he's 7 feet tall, but he distributes the ball like a guard. He can drop threes. He can slam it on you. Like, what can he not do? And look at the Nuggets shot 56.4% from the floor against the Hawks 40%. Against the Hawks. Let me see what they.
I think we were 45% that particular game.
Yeah, we were 45%. That was one. And then the other was, they were 40% from 3. We were 34%. Everything else was equal. We had 14 turnovers. They had 13. I think we out-rebounded them by 1. But it's just the outburst of scoring. And it really gives you a situation when he's coming down the court. Do you pull up to cover? You know what I mean? Do you put a body? Because if you overhelp, he's going to sling it to somebody. And look at, they shot well. So to Glenn's point, right now, we are without who broke his hand?
Larry Nance Jr.
Larry Nance. In order to have a chance to beat them, you need all 3 healthy. You need Larry Nance, you need Okongwu, you need Clint Capella. And you may have to have 2 of them on the floor at the same time. But you need that presence because Jokic is a force, man. like Glenn said, he's one of one. So there you go.
Right. And I hate that too because, of course, we've been swept now by the Denver Nuggets.
Oh yeah,
I mean, now, now I guess you can say, well, at least the second go around was better than the first, but it's still the same result was the same. The Hawks actually held Denver to 40% because they only got up 33s. They, what I'm saying, normally teams, what I'm saying, hit multiple threes, what I'm saying, closer to the 17, 18, 19 mark. But I like the fact that the Hawks were able to keep them to only 12 threes. The problem was at halftime, the Nuggets had like 43 points in the paint already. And that's going back to Jokic, being able to drive. Russell Westbrook, which was a great signing by them, by the way, having him come off the bench and, being able to distribute. They're kicking out Michael Porter Jr. He's hitting threes. The Denver Nuggets, if I'm not mistaken, one, two. They had multiple people in the double figures. 7 guys in double figures. And the Hawks, I already know the Hawks only had like 4. And I already know with Trae Young having Trae Young having 30, you having 20 from DeAndre Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
But the main thing is that game you did not have Jalen Johnson to help out in that front court.
Right.
And let's just go ahead and get the elephant in the room. Not having JJ on this road trip, catastrophic. I'm just saying, Glenn, that's 20 and 10 pretty much that you're missing.
Yeah, he's second best offensive player on the team, right, by a good margin, and he's a little bit of a parallel. I mean, Jokic is much further along in his career, but Jalen can handle, Jalen can pass, Jalen can kind of create his own shot, Jalen can get to the paint and attack the rim and put pressure on the rim, and there's really no one else on the Hawks that can do that in the front court, right? The way that Jalen can. So it is a massive missing piece on offense, but also on defense, just to have, he would have been all the back cuts they gave up. He could have been a help defender behind, when Clint's up the floor and Jokic up the floor with Jokic, having some size on that back line to help with, cutting off guys cutting to the rim would have made a big difference. You got David Roddy trying to do that. You got somebody else trying to do that. It's just not even close to the same thing.
Yeah.
And so, big picture on this road trip is the Hawks are missing Trae or Jalen, and they're playing a decent team or better. They're going to have a hard time winning that game.
Yes.
And we saw that throughout consistently across the whole road trip.
Right. And the same thing for when you look at the Laker game, you see, okay, it was too much LeBron in that second half as well. But, AD, he was like 6 for 17 that game. And I believe you had tweeted about that too, Glenn.
Yeah.
And Clint, so you want more from your front court from Clint and Onyeka. But in that 3-game stretch just right there, you had Jokic, then you had to go against AD, who is more athletic than any center that we have. You know what I'm saying? Then you also have, next thing you got Zubats, who's probably bigger as in girth than any center that we have. So you have these guys going off of these high numbers. And I feel like the glaring issue was the fact that you didn't have that front court help, like you were saying about JJ to help with back cuts, because we keep getting smacked with those, especially those 3 games. Kawhi Leonard coming back. Then what they had, what's my other man that is like a 6-man for them? Not Coffee. He was coming back off the injury too, though. Oh my Lord, I forgot his name.
Terrence Mann. He's coming off injury. Was coming back from an injury
for the Clippers.
I think he was coming off a broken finger, right?
Terrence Mann.
Yeah.
Terrence Mann, and he came back and gave you 12 big points. And that's another group. Those guys had 12 guys in double figures. On that Clippers night. The Lakers was similar because you just having these certain guys that just showing up all of a sudden against the Hawks. And guys, have you guys noticed that the third quarter is starting to rear its ugly head again against the Atlanta Hawks?
Yes. Definitely in the Denver game, definitely in this one. I want to say in the Laker game too, although LeBron came out just phenomenal that game. LeBron really is a Hawk killer. He just is. He is.
It seems like it. We're back to his Cleveland days, right?
I thought I was watching the 2015 conference finals again.
You see, that's what I'm saying right there, man. That's not good. That's not good. But yeah, He just took over. Took over in the fourth quarter. Really, it started in the third quarter, but the fourth quarter, it was just like, what can you do? And to
Exactly.
JJ's point, that was like the last time. Correct me if I'm wrong. That was the only game that JJ really played outside of the Raptors game on this road trip, right? I
I think
believe
you're
so.
correct. Yes.
All
I
right.
think
So in that game, he still gave you 19-8, and he wasn't even healthy because remember he had just missed the game. He had just missed the Nuggets game
yeah.
with
Yeah.
that dealing with that shoulder injury. So him not even being 100% still gave you 19-8-1 in 33 minutes. You know, so like you missed that on this road trip. You really did. And I know the heroics of Trae Young, you know, so we all was watching that Utah Jazz game and how it came all the way down, you know, to the last shot. Um, Guys, you know, so before we get into the heroics of Trae Young, leading up to this game, we've already talked about the rebounds. We've already talked about, I mean, well, we already know second chance points and points off turnovers. We already know those wasn't kind to the Hawks as well. But leading up to this game going to Utah, though, don't you guys feel like, well, this is how I feel. I feel like the Hawks were getting like like guys were like being real physical with the Atlanta Hawks. No matter if they're a young team, older team, they were trying to take advantage of the physicality that they could against the Atlanta Hawks. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think the Hawks are young, have some young players in the rotation, right? And I think there's something to learning to adjust to the way a game is being officiated. The Lakers game, they allowed a ton of physicality in the Lakers game and the Clippers game, and the Hawks didn't kind of match the physicality, right? And the
Right.
Lakers more veteran team, Clippers more veteran team, and so I think they're maybe you could say understand a little bit like the young guys on the Hawks not having the experience to kind of know, okay, they're officiating the game like this, they're allowing this, so we're going to do that. And the Hawks just didn't kind of connect the dots on that. And you go into Utah, and that was a more, I thought, middle of the road, like normal officiating. You know, the game is more
Mhm.
officiated to the rule book, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I think there's a learning curve, for the young team to figure out earlier in the game. Oh, they're calling the game like this today, and so I can get away with some things I don't normally get away with. You see the other team doing that. You see the Hawks. It seems like it takes till maybe the third quarter till they kind of figure out what they can do, and then they get frustrated, as opposed to just recognizing the way the game is being called.
Right.
And I feel like that becomes a distraction for them, and so but I think that maps to them just having some guys who are scaling up into the biggest roles they've ever had in their career before. Dyson, top of that, and Ricochet's a rookie, still kind of learning his way around the NBA. And things like that. And that's just something the Hawks have to get better at, is playing to the way the game's being officiated. And I thought that they didn't do that in both LA games, and I thought that was a pretty big part of why they had a hard time being competitive in those games.
Absolutely. I agree. What you say, T. Will?
Well, Glenn, I have a question for you. Would that not be incumbent upon coaching to make them aware of that sooner, or what are your thoughts on that? Like,
yeah, I mean, I kind of putting my coaching lenses on, I think for sure. I think the hardest thing for us to know is like, was that happening, and the Hawks just couldn't kind of execute what they were being coached to kind of.
Right.
So it's hard. It's always hard to know whether it was a coaching gap or an implementation gap or some parts of both. It's hard for us to know. But you would hope that the coaching staff is really drawing attention to that as early in the game as possible. Hard for us to know whether that did or didn't happen.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, T. Will.
No, my thoughts are just on that West Coast trip, not having Jalen in there, really hurt, right? I tell you, I think it was Manti Te'o was talking about when Notre Dame played Alabama, and Alabama came running out the tunnel, and he said he looked back at his teammates' eyes, and they were this big, and he said, "Yeah, we're not winning that game." And I think on this West Coast trip, I mean, dude, man, Jokic is, you know what I mean? Jokic is a force, right? So you get out there on the first trip, Jokic comes out, and it was pretty good up until the third quarter, and then Jokic just became Jokic, and it's like, wow, right?
Well, if you think about it, they were trying to run away in the first half, and then the Hawks was able to walk them back down.
Right.
Remember when Jokic went out, the Hawks were able to make a nice run, and then I forgot the coach name. I'm sorry, but he was like Mike Malone. He was like, we getting Jokic back in there. As soon as Jokic came in, you seen the whole pace of things just change.
Yeah.
Right back. Jokic running the ball down the floor. They running on fast break, getting out in transition on the Hawks, and everything just completely changed, man. And like to your credit, what you was about to say about the third quarter, by that time it was like, all right, we know what we want to do against this Hawks team. Let's go out there and execute. And the Hawks weren't able to do anything. It was just snowballing downhill.
Yeah, and then LeBron. I mean, LeBron. I would equate LeBron against the Hawks like a mongoose against a cobra. If you know what a mongoose is, that's like the one animal in the animal kingdom Cobra can't beat, no matter what he does. If you look at 90% of matchups between cobras and mongoose, yes, I'm weird. I do look at them, but if you look at 90% of those matchups, the mongoose is going to win. I can't explain it. He's the mongoose is going to win, and that is LeBron. Except LeBron is huge. He's like a ginormous mongoose, and we're a smaller cobra. But whatever, he dominates us. You got that. Then you go to the Clippers, and like Glenn said, these are savvy veterans. Hopefully, we learn from this. But my takeaway from this is Jay needs to get healthy.
Oh, of course.
That's
my thing is, you already know that the Hawks are in a tough bind when you got Zachary Ricochet guarding former MVP, former All-Star James Harden. You know what I'm saying? When you already got people was jumping on Zach, telling me, man, James Harden putting him in the blender. I'm like, guys,
it's James Harden.
You realize how many pros, how many seasoned veterans James Harden has put in the blender. That is the tallest ask of the season, if you ask me, to ask your first year rookie to ask him to guard James Harden, no matter the length or the size or whatever that he has. That's just a crafty veteran. So everything that happened, him going downhill, he realized how he can play Ricochet and everything too, man. It's just, come on now. Like, for the people that jumped on Zachary for that, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Matter of fact, you guard him.
That man is a no doubt first ballot Hall of Famer,
without a doubt.
Who's accomplished a ton in his career, has all the tricks, and so I admire Ricochet just giving the effort that he gave.
Indeed,
and
it's gonna be good for him.
Learning and you have this learning from that and feedback loops and all that sort of stuff, and that's going to help him in the long run, even if there might have been an ugly possession or two. To your point, Chris, Harden does that to everybody.
Come on, man.
I mean, dude, that's tough, man. Like that is a tough ask. That's like, I can't give you an analogy of what's that like.
Shoot, that's the mongoose and the cobra all over again.
Right. That's even worse, man. That's like going out as a little league team playing the Monstars. Like, you don't have a shot. You know what I mean? You're guarding dudes 16 feet tall. Yeah, bro, you don't. Like Glenn said, he has all the tricks. All the knowledge. He can shoot.
Get you in foul trouble. All that.
Right. He can do all of that. And you got Ricochet. And no disrespect to Ricochet. He has a future in this league, but he's not there yet, right?
Yeah, the tallest act I've seen them ask him all season is to guard James Harden. So when I seen that, I just was like, you know what, Zach, just do your best. Get some knowledge from this, if nothing else. Because regardless, guarding players like that, that's a teaching moment, and hopefully he can store that in his mind and use that going forward. But yeah, in that game, I was like, this is gonna be tough. Man, and believe it or not, the Hawks still were hanging around. The Hawks are tough, okay? They're a tough young squad, and they hang around. If you allow them to, they'll hang around, they'll mess around, go on that run, and take that lead from you too. And I seen that the Clippers, they didn't want that to happen. And then again, here come that third quarter, and they just took off on Atlanta. We was unable to recover fully.
It's difficult, man. But I bet Harden was on the sideline like, they have who guard me? Oh my God. Oh my God.
That's one of those when you're a veteran, you're chomping at the bit. Seriously.
Who? They're not gonna put Dyson Daniels on me. What? Not
Right.
even Dre. Oh my God. Yeah.
Well, fellas, we are definitely getting more closer to home here. Of course, just briefly, I'm just going to go real quick to start it off. First of all, why wasn't Patty Mills shooting like that in Atlanta? That's one takeaway. Colin Sexton is good enough to be a starter in this league. I know I've been trying to kind of put him as a backup, mainly because we need a backup, but that's not going to happen. I've noticed that. Lori Marketing and Glenn, you you spoke on this too. Lori Marketing will not be an Atlanta Hawk. As good as people like him, as much as people like him, he won't be because we don't got the capital to give up. And it's Danny Ainge who you got to talk to. So that's also that's like a A and B thing right there. And shout out to Walker Kessler, man. I think he now has over 400 blocks, and I remember hearing something like that about him. So I mean, that's a great milestone to only be 3 years in and have over 400 blocks already. So credit to them. But at the end of the day, you seen the reactions, Glenn. T. Will, I'm pretty sure you've seen the reactions. Atlanta Hawks accounts everywhere has been putting them up, and just the Jazz thought they had us. They thought they were going to overtime, and then just ice Trae Young coming out there, 50-footer, just send the Utah Jazz home, wondering what the heck just happened. Like, guys, like, what were you guys' thoughts? I'll say when Colin Sexton hit the step back on V.
Yeah, I mean, in your mind, you're like, there's no time left, right? And the Hawks, I mean, if we were on it, being honest, but Hawks have been bad in short clock situations at the end of the game this year. They haven't produced good shots in that setting. I was kind of joking. I was like, maybe Trey half quarters are better than these ISOs he's been running into two defenders, And but I mean, you got to give Sexton credit because Veet was all over him when he made the
He
shot.
was in real time. And I got to apologize. In real time, I was on Veet's head, though. I was like, he's going to shoot the three. They need a three. But looking at it, Veet was a lot closer than I even thought. So that was just a tough shot. Please continue.
Yeah, and then the deflection caused a little bit of a scramble, too. Which kind of throws things off a little bit and stuff like that. But, don't know, like, if there wasn't a deflection, were they going to foul a three-point shooter before they got into a shooting motion? You're up 3. Some coaches want to foul, put you on the line for 2 shots, and that sort of thing. So It's hard to know, but it's just interesting. I watched the Jazz play, and they're obviously rebuilding.
Right.
You might tanking, probably everybody's chasing that kid that plays at Duke, trying to kind of get the long ball as you can, right? But I mean, it was just interesting because in the first, say, 2.5 quarters, Will Hardy, the Jazz coach, had Kessler up the floor trying to impact Trey on screens, and getting his big to the level of the screen. And then the last quarter and a half, they were just sinking everybody to the paint and just like, hey, you guys shoot threes. We don't think you can make them. And Clint, was dunking everything in the first 2.5 quarters. And in the last quarter and a half, he had no space at the rim.
Yeah, he did.
I mean, for me, I like a lot of times I watch from kind of the coaching angle. And the adjustments Hardy made in the game were just really impressive. And that he's what got his team back into the game and gave them a shot to win that in the game with those second half adjustments that he made. But
Absolutely.
I mean, you look at Larry Marcus, like he's a 7-footer coming off of pin downs. Like,
bro,
crazy. It's just like, how do you defend that? And it felt like he made 15 threes. I think he made 7.
He made 8. Yeah,
and I think 3 in the second. So I think it felt worse than it was. But you're just watching him.
He kept them in the game in the first half. Lori had like 5 or 6 or something, like 5 at least in the first half.
Yeah.
You just think about if he doesn't hit a lot of those shots, the Hawks are able to have a nice gap. But Lori kept them in it.
Yeah, but you mentioned a minute ago, Chris. Like the one quality, hard to know how many games they're going to win. Hard to know is Jalen going to be fully healthy the rest of the year. But the one quality this team has, they didn't have last year. Like last year, you're watching a game, they're down 15 in the second quarter, and you're like, this game's over.
That's it,
right? This year, they just keep working. They just keep fighting, and they still have limitations. Like they have some offensive limitations that show up in that. And the Lakers in the Denver game, the first half they put up 71 points, second half 49. Right?
Yeah.
And so you're watching that, and you're like, "There's no way the Hawks, if this game gets to 130, the Hawks don't have the offensive juice that Denver has. The Hawks across the half they kept up, across the whole game. You're just like, that's not going to happen. They've got to get stops, But even if they come up short, this team just they stay on task. They keep working. They keep fighting. And I think, they need more offensive talent on this team when they can, make that happen, however they might be able to make that happen and to continue growing their young defenders. But they're going to win 4, 5, 6 games in the second half of the year that they maybe shouldn't win just by continuing to work and fight. Even though, I thought a lot of that road trip was kind of a frustrating thing to watch. Just like they can't solve this thing the other team is doing. They can't solve, but they just keep working. And to me, that's an admirable quality that makes it a little bit easier to watch those games, even when they're not going well for the Hawks.
Absolutely. What you got, T. Will?
Yeah, I agree with everything Glenn said. I think what sticks out to me about this team is, and what I hope they continue to do, they're not a great 3-point shooting team, but they continue to make points in the paint. And to me, when they've won games, they've either dominated or at least have scored more points in the paint, hung around into the end, and then that bench took over. And it's just, with Jalen Johnson out, it's hard to win. And we need another quality big, So, but I mean, I like the fight in this team. I like the fact that they take pride in defense. And I agree. They probably will win about 5 or 6 games going forward that they shouldn't win. What do you guys think their final record would be? You think they're sitting around 500, 2 games over? Glenn, give me your thoughts on that.
For me, that's hard because I don't know exactly which direction the season is going to go. I think if we're a healthy squad, I think we can definitely be over 500. But again, it's just really tough for me to say right now. We're right there. I still believe this is one of our best starts since 2015-16. So it's just we'll see. But it's hard for me to give you a number right now, especially before All-Star break.
Yeah, and I think it's also hard to know what they might do at the trade deadline. That matters, right? Do they want to? Do they want? And I think this is me speculating here, but I think they're just going to be kind of opportunistic. The whole league is waiting for the Jimmy Butler thing to land, and it's going to be hard for anyone to make a move until that gets resolved one way or the other, right? But if a team needs to move some salary to make room to get Jimmy Butler on their cap sheet, Hawks hey, we'll help you with that. Can we get a veteran back at point guard? Can we get this? Can we get that?
Okay.
And so it's hard to know which way they're going to go. Right now they're leaning into basically Veet and Dyson kind of functioning as the backup point guard, and those minutes are rough against a team that can play defense. Against teams like Toronto that really aren't defending that well, fine. Not the biggest deal in the world. But I think if they added if they could add a veteran point guard that can produce average offense while Trey's sitting, then they might get the 45, 46 wins, and that's 4 or 5 games over 500. But if they decide, no, we're just going to keep developing our young guys, then they're probably not going to win that many games, and they're going to be closer to a 500 team and probably be in the play-in. And so I think if we look back, the DeJounte trade, they just paid whatever the Spurs asked.
Right? It did.
Right? And that's how they got themselves into a bad spot. They have fewer draft assets now as a result of that. I'm not a DeJounte hater at all, right? But they overpaid, for him. And so I think this front office is proving that we're not going to just pay whatever someone's asking, in a trade or what have you. We're going to wait until it benefits us or it feels fair and there's an opportunity for us to capitalize on something. And I think that Hawks fans, when the team is losing, is trade, make a trade. I think fans sometimes don't realize how hard trading is. You can't just force another team to make a trade with you.
Right.
But I feel like this front office will be opportunistic between now and the trade deadline. We're 3.5 weeks out, and so it's not that far away. But I feel like if they can add a veteran point guard, 45 wins might be possible, and getting to the 6th seed might be something that's in play. If they're just like, no, we're going to keep rolling with Dyson and Veet, then that's probably going to cost them 3 or 4 games that they might have won if they had a veteran backup point guard. And I think that's not the end of the world if they decide to do that, especially if the only trade that's available is one that would be harmful to them in the long run.
Yeah, seriously, man. Because right now you already know it's trade season. You're gonna see all different type of things, and I just want people to realize that the Hawks are not going to take on any unnecessary salary. They're not going to make any unnecessary moves, especially after that trade that they made to get DeJounte off the roster. You don't do that and then go make a dumb move. You don't. You just don't set yourself back like that. And I do believe that the Hawks are setting a foundation for, what I'm saying, for the future, pretty much for the now and the future. We have a nice baseline of guys with the head of the snake being Trey Young, the veteran. We already know that's our superstar, but you got a superstar in the making in Jalen Johnson. Now you got career highs for DeAndre Hunter because he doesn't have to do it all by himself anymore. At the fact that you have Dyson Daniels now. I'm so glad that, saying that the coaching staff seen a lot in Dyson to start him next to Trey. Because a lot of people were still saying, oh, bogey. And I'm like, no, bogey off the bench. And I'm glad that it's working out for them in that aspect. But something that just, that was a continued theme was I feel like, the Hawks not having JJ, and you kind of seen it in that Suns game. The fact that you didn't have JJ allowed them to try to hone in on like Dre Hunter, home in on Trey Young, because like you don't have that extra source, and it's like, okay, Dyson Daniels is going to have to prove it to us. Garrison Matthews, we know that he's a shooter. We know that he can't do too much more than that. So let's just lock in on him when he's shooting, make him get rid of the ball. And of course, they dominated us in the points in the paint, of course, 54-46. We did make that a little bit better in the second half, but in the first half, it was looking ugly again. Like in that Suns game, I feel like the Hawks really could have still won that game. They just didn't have enough firepower. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think they got tired too. The last game on a long road trip, sort of thing. I felt, it's kind of funny because Dre was having another rough game, but then he had like 3 possessions
He had
in a
3
row.
fouls in the first half, though.
Yeah. But then in the fourth quarter, he like really asserted himself, and they were down like 11, and he got him to like 5, like on 3, scored on 3 consecutive possessions. Like he single-handedly, and those are the little glimpses. You're like, man, if he could do that really consistently, that's a real difference maker, for the Hawks, right?
Correct.
And then Trey had that, the kind of the long 3-point shot early in the shot clock when they had a chance to kind of cut it to 3.
Yeah.
And I watched that shot. And I don't always love that shot, but then I look at the amount of time that's left in the game, and Trey's like, we got to get something quick,
Yeah.
And that's probably was his thought process. Then he came back the other way and he gambled on the still and missed, and Quinn looked a little frustrated there. But those plays look like plays tired players make, to me. You still have to figure out how to do better. Like they needed a better shot than that. I don't want to say there should be no accountability, but I mean, in my mind, they should have got a better shot than that. But at the same time,
I agree with you.
You got to generate 4 possessions the rest of the game, and so a shot in the first 5 seconds shot clock. If you make that shot, man, they have a real chance to win the game. Unfortunately, he didn't make the shot.
Right. You make that shot, you like, oh, okay, because it's one of those things where you're like, no, Trey. And it's like, if he makes it, you're like, good job. You know what I'm saying? But he missed it. It's just like, so it's like, dang, bro. He's like, we wish we could have, because so much, it's not a lot of time on the clock, but I felt like the Hawks could have at least, so maybe got an extra couple dribbles, couple passes, and maybe got a better shot. I know it wasn't a lot of time left either, though. T. Will, what you got for that Suns game?
I think it's exactly what you said. Just too much firepower, man. That's going to have to be addressed.
Right.
And the only way I can see you doing it is a trade. And like I say, the NBA is complicated when it comes to trade. It's not like baseball or the NFL. You got specific guidelines, so it is more complicated. But in my humble opinion, we need a backup guard and maybe an additional big man if you can get it. But the prevalent need right now is a backup guard, because you can't take a nosedive offensively when Trey's out. So
the non Trey Young minutes as it's been dubbed now. And then again, the Hawks, they were down, but they rallied back. And then those 3 possessions where you really honestly you can look at it and you can kind of cater to Glen's point about tired legs, long road trip, a lot of shoot, man. Again, going back to back in LA, then you're shooting over here to Utah, then you're shooting down here Utah at a high stakes game, high energy, high emotions at the end, and then you shoot down to Phoenix, and then you have guys like Grayson Allen making up and under layups, all kind of stuff. I was like, man, who is this guy? So that's Grayson Allen. And also at the end of the game, when Kevin Durant, I think Tyus Jones and Grayson Allen hit those 3 consecutive threes, and it made it 105 to 120. I was like, that's it. Because those shots, some of them was contested, but it's like it wasn't like any kind of sense of urgency there. It was kind of like almost just like walking over to him and just kind of like putting your hand up a little bit because you have tired legs. You mean you had to shoot, you had to hustle to get back into it because again that third quarter showed up against the Atlanta Hawks in the Suns game, and then you had to fight. You know what I'm saying? I'm not down yet to even get back into that situation, but then I just feel like they just ran out. It just ran out of gas.
Yeah.
What is that? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Glenn.
I'll say quickly, too, Will. NBA players will tell you when you're playing from behind, you use all your energy to catch up.
Yeah.
And then you're out of energy sometimes at the end to kind of close the game the way that you want. And so playing from behind has its detriment, and it's harder to manage your energy across that.
Yeah.
And it's not just a basketball thing. That can happen in football, baseball, any sport. I mean, shoot, T. Will, we know, right? Atlanta Braves.
We do. There's a saying that says, there's a saying that says exhaustion makes cowards of us all. And, and it's true. I got a question for you guys. And let's start with Mr. Glenn. Who is a potential trade for us for a backup guard? That's a realistic situation that we would have the capital or be able to maybe work with the team on a 3-team deal to get in here, if any is possible.
Yeah, I know it's kind of funny because as I kind of post things to my Patreon and stuff, and I'm like, the guy I really like that I think the Hawks could never get is Craig Porter Jr. up in Cleveland. I think he's up and coming, backup point guard. He doesn't play for them at all, but he has a really attractive contract that Cleveland's going to have to manage an expensive roster, and that affordable contract he has is going to be, I think, an asset to them. So that's sort of a dream scenario. He's a very mature. He has a very mature play style for a young guy in the league. Another guy I like. It's a little hard to know because he's only played on bad teams or bad to mediocre teams. I like Trey Mann up in Charlotte. He's got the ability to handle the ball, score, good shooter, can play on or off the ball. I think that helps. You can put him on the court with Trey if you need to, in certain situations and stuff like that. But then you think in the division, is Charlotte gonna? I mean, the Hawks have done. They did the Dwight Howard trade with Charlotte. They've done a number of trades with Charlotte across the years. Right. And so that's a guy I think doesn't really solve everything. He's not the veteran that might be out there. But I started looking across all the rosters and I'm like, where are the good veteran backup point guards? Like Monty Morris is in Phoenix. Can't imagine Phoenix would want to give him up. But if they're trying to get Jimmy Butler, they might start sending guys out, and you have a chance maybe to get him.
And they do have interest. The interest is mutual. That report just came out.
Yeah, exactly. But there aren't that many good backup point guards in the league right now. I mean, the Knicks have a good winning campaign. They're trying to do serious stuff. They're not going to trade campaign,
Right.
And you just kind of look around, and normally you could find 3 to 5 guys, young 30s, maybe on a bad team, being that veteran, trying to help the young guards and stuff. But you look around the league, and it's hard to identify who those guys are. And so for me, I think it's going to have to be a young guy that's not playing a ton. Where they are that might be available, and like I said, Trey Mann comes to mind. Even though you'd like to do. I mean, I'd rather have a veteran guy, but when I try to figure out who that person is, I have a hard time trying to figure out who that person is because there aren't that many guys like that right now.
You're right. I like Trey Man. I've liked Trey Man since OKC. I just felt like he wasn't getting any opportunities.
Yep.
And you see him in Charlotte, and he can score the basketball. And
Yeah.
you know, what I'm saying, of course, he's not a veteran. If I had to choose anybody, like I really hate that we couldn't lure Tyus Jones to Atlanta because I know we had interest in him in the offseason, but I understand why he went to Phoenix, who he can play with, and everything like that. But if they're trying to make this Jimmy Butler deal, I would love to have Tyus Jones as a backup for Trey Young. I feel like it would elevate the Hawks so much. If you get somebody like that, or just another veteran, I was even open to have Dennis Schroeder come back. But you see, the Warriors, they was like, we're not going to be waiting around on this. We need this now. So, and that's what some organizations they do, to just go ahead and take care of business. What you got?
Things are kind of going south for the Warriors, and the Warriors made that trade with
Right.
just enough time that they could trade him if they want to before the trade deadline gets here.
That would be crazy.
Yeah. So and so it'll be interesting to see if the Warriors are like, oh, we're going to punt on this season and maybe send him out and that sort of thing. And that's why the trade happened when it did. Is I think the Warriors are trying to give themselves flexibility that if things don't turn around for us, we can turn around and kind of move him for something that might help us draft capital or whatever it might be. So that'll be interesting to see how the Warriors navigate that too.
Right. All right, man. Well, I know another thing too, real quick, before I move on to this. I was not expecting Bradley Beal to have that kind of game against the Atlanta Hawks either. He's been a roller coaster, I feel like, with injuries, points, production. He's in the starting lineup. He's on the bench, whatever, and then he has 25 off the bench, looking like DeAndre Hunter. With how he, elevated his game against the Hawks. That's another thing too. Despite Devin Booker going 0 for 8 from 3, so you got the rest of the production from Beal. And I know we're about to play the Suns again, so I'm just thinking about those guys, Booker, Beal, Durant, and Grayson Allen. Those were the guys that really beat you. And you're gonna have to, look forward to that in a couple of days. Actually, I'm not sure. Glenn, did you hear when did they plan on rescheduling the Rockets versus the Hawks game?
I don't know. Nothing's been announced as far as I've seen.
No, me not.
But I was going through some of the Suns stats before the game. I did a little preview video and posted.
Okay.
Suns are 30th in the league in points in the paint. And
Right.
they're one of the top 3 in spot up efficiency and volume. So they generate a lot of 3-point shots, from spot up shooters. And they're one of the top 3 in both volume and efficiency on off screen shooting. And so, and that's where a lot, so it's just interesting to me that the Hawks struggled to keep them off the rim because the Suns don't really attack the paint that much. Maybe with the changes to the starting unit, maybe they're going to start kind of getting more shots at the rim. But you have to defend them. The Suns are a veteran team. They move the ball. First pass, second pass, third pass. You got to defend all those actions against a veteran team like that, and that's something the Hawks have to do a lot better on Tuesday to give themselves a chance to win that game.
At least there's going to be some home cooking, so hopefully, that will help the Atlanta Hawks. But real quick, okay, so on this road trip, man, the Atlanta Hawks have yielded 740 points. That's 123 points per game on 276 field goals. So that means anytime that the Hawks gave up over 40 in a game, they lost. The 2 games that they won was 38 and 40. As far as like field goals made by the other team, 288 rebounds to 242 for the Hawks. So Atlanta was out rebounded by 48 more. And also 192 assists to 183. And our guy, Trey Young, of course, had 69 of those. But the Hawks are undefeated when Trey has 20 games this season. So maybe that's, you hear that, Trey? We need more production. We need more production, Trey.
It's not just vision, Trey. It's not just vision. We need
we need more. But man, JJ and Larry Nance, those are right now 2 big injuries for the Atlanta Hawks. Yeah. Larry Nance, because he's able to space that floor. I like him shooting the 3 more so than Yeka Okongwu.
Yes.
Glenn, I can't stand Onyeka shooting threes. Okay, I can't stand it.
It's
But I understand why he's shooting them. I do.
Yeah, it's funny. He shot like 40% from the corner last year. Not a ton, not a high volume. We know he's not a volume shooter.
Yeah,
But
I thought so.
right now, everything just looks ugly coming out of his hand. It's just like
Bro.
he's in the corner, and you're like, really? We're gonna take this shot, And I hate that.
I'm like, pass it again.
Yeah, because I mean, Onyeka has been the most frustrating player for me this season, for the Hawks because I don't know what's going on. I know he's got the toe issue. It's hard for us to know how much that's impacting him, and what have you and stuff like that. And he has to play with Nance down. Even if he's like 80% or 70% healthy or whatever it is, he's got to play, because Nance is not there right now. And but his last few seasons before this year, his finishing, his floater, his self-creation was all like really, really good. And that's just he's had maybe 3 games where he's shown some of that this year, and we're almost halfway through the year, and so I don't know what happened to him. I know that he spends a lot of time with Trey off, and I think Quinn's been trying to get more minutes with Trey, with him. But with Trey on the court, you want Clint back there kind of, cleaning things up in the paint, defensively. So it's some hard choices for Quinn. But the Onyeka stuff is, I hate it for him because I think he works hard. I think he's a good kid. I think he plays hard. But man, the results have just been rough all season long. I hope the second half he can figure it out and turn it around, because that is a big, big part of the Hawks need to have the option to close games with Onyeka and have him be a good offensive closer for them. And that's just been something that hasn't been consistently there for them this year. So fingers crossed he's able to kind of figure out a way to kind of get himself back on track as a scorer and to have the offensive contributions that he's had prior to the season, even though we haven't seen a lot of it this year outside of a few games.
Yeah, man. Onyeka has been a story. Honestly, if we just get more of our front court, I believe the Hawks are in a lot more of these games. Not saying that they're winning. I'm not going to say that they're winning, but I think they give themselves a better opportunity if they get a little bit more from Clint here. They get a little bit more from Onyeka there. Also, again, like I was saying, teams were honing in on DeAndre Hunter. DeAndre Hunter only averaged 15.3 points on this road trip. I know he was in foul trouble. The Laker game, he was 1 for 12. So, he had some bad shooting nights. And my thing is, you can't jump on Dre. Dre's been great all year. So, you really can't jump on him like that. But I just feel like teams were actually kind of trying to lock in on him a little bit more, knowing that he is the 6th man of the year candidate front runner. And also guys like Garrison Matthews and Vit Krejci. I feel like Vit was a little bit more aggressive because he had to be. But guys like Garrison, he couldn't really just run around and be almost like that thief in the night, stealing three-point attempts. They kind of locked in on him too, because Garrison in 6 games only had 50 points, and he was 10 for 37 from 3. So, yeah, he's getting up some shots, but as far as like knocking them down, I feel like guys were closing out on him a little bit more as well too. Some of his shots, he kind of had to come off the screen and just rise and kind of just try to get it there, because he got guys hounding him. He got guys coming right behind him, right off that screen, off those pin downs, right behind him. So being right on him. But this is what I have for you. And T Will, you too, man. Shoot, you too. I'm trying to figure out why on this road trip and just period since JJ been gone, why aren't we seeing more of Zachary Ricochet? He's been averaging 23 minutes for the season now, but just even on this 6-game road swing, he only is averaging 2 minutes more, a half a point more, but he's shown signs of being aggressive. I think, so in the minutes that he is getting, he is trying to be more aggressive. He is trying to score. Of course, he doesn't have it all down pat yet, but I was liking the aggression that I was seeing from Zachary, and especially in these last 2 games, Phoenix in particular, I think you could have used Zachary Ricochet a little bit more. Do you think that goes back to, and I'm using and this is another reason why I'm asking you too, T. Will, do you think this is going back to that old habit that, it's about Quinn on how he doesn't like to play rookies? he does like to stay with the veterans and everything. Or like, what is it? Why don't you guys think we've seen more of Zachary Ricochet?
Mr. Glenn, go right ahead,
Yeah.
sir.
Well, I mean, this is a guess, but he's 19 and he's not strong. He doesn't have the strongest body yet.
Right.
And I my guess is they're just trying to protect him physically. They don't want to, have him sustain an injury, or what have you. I do hope in the second half of the season they start to kind of ramp it up some more.
Right.
But I agree with you. He's been he's a really impactful defender, especially on the ball. And he's a good help defender too. So he has a lot of defensive value. The offense does kind of come and go, like it does with any rookie. Really, you have to think about that.
Right.
But my guess is they're just trying not to, give him too much physical workload this year to the point that they might risk an injury. That first overall pick, huge investment, massive investment there for the organization. And I think they just, are they being too cautious? Some might say they are, but at the same time, they probably have data that's informing them on how many minutes,
there you go.
It makes sense for him to play. But you hope they're kind of buying some time in the second half to play him a little bit more and ramp him up a little bit more down the stretch.
Yeah, I think they have him on a pitch count. It is essentially what Glenn is saying, and that was my first thoughts. Change the subject a little bit. I'm worried about the Braves. I'm really worried about them. and I'm gonna tell you where it times in. You had who was a relief pitcher that we signed that was great for us last year as a starting pitcher? Ronaldo
Lopez. Yeah.
Ronaldo Lopez pitched 60% more than he had in 2-3 previous seasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Chris Sale pitched more than he had in previous seasons. Chris Sale has an injury history. So 2 of the 4 that you're counting on, because Fried is gone, Charlie's gone, 2 of the 4 that you're counting on have pitched more than they have in the past couple of seasons. Spencer's coming off of an injury.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially you got minor leaguers that are going to be their backup. And what happens, God forbid, if Raylo and or
For sale
get hurt? You're in a bad situation. So I say that to tie that back to, and again, this is the age of data, right? You got a lot of analytics in the back, and the analytics probably say, look, he's probably good for 23 minutes for the first half of the season. He is 19. He doesn't have his full man strength yet. You don't want him to get injured. So I agree with Glenn. I think that's absolutely what they're doing. And you have to look at it that way. You know what I mean? Honestly, it would surprise me. It would surprise me if the Braves do not have a couple of pitchers go down next year, because I would have had Red Low on a pitch count last year. Like he pitched 50. He pitched 50 the year before, and last year he pitched like 130. Your arm and elbow can only do so. You get what I'm saying? So yeah.
I like the parallel you made there too, well, and even like Schwellenbach, like next year will be his first year, presumably starting from start. And you look at what happened. You look what happened to Strider after his first full year starting, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I think I like the parallels that you made there to Ricochet as well. And we do hope the data says, okay, once we get to mid-February, whatever, like we can start adding 5 minutes a game, and that sort of stuff. But we'll see if that happens or not. But I mean, to me, like I said, you don't get the number 1 overall pick that long. And yeah, I mean, some Hawks fans will still say it was the worst draft class to get number 1 overall. It's never bad to get number 1 overall pick. You get to pick anybody,
Right.
I do think he's going to end up being a really high-end role player, but you know what? Championship teams are made of 2 stars and a bunch of high-end role players. That's what they are. We have to develop those guys.
Yes.
So I think it is like, hey, this is an investment that we have to make sure that we're managing the right way. And I think the parallel there that you made there, T-Well, is just makes a lot of sense.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate
it. It does make a lot of sense. And I got to give it like a little pushback, man, because I'm old school. I'm just saying. We didn't have all this data and stuff in the back end, man. Players just went out there and played, man. But at the same time, though, I feel like guys are coming out a lot sooner than it was back then, too. You think about it, it wasn't a lot of guys coming out at 19 years old. And if it is, it was a special case. You know what I'm saying? The KGs, the Kobe's, you know what I'm saying? All those, the Dwight Howards, all those guys like that. But when Jordan and Barkley and all those guys were coming out, they were already in their 20s. And most of them already had their hamstring.
Had played in the Olympics, had played 3-4 full seasons in college ball. And then you go back, I mean, it's kind of funny if you're my age, like I still remember like Kobe in that draft class, like teams didn't want to draft high school players. Like, look at all the teams that passed on Kobe freaking Bryant. Come on, man. So that's different now too. And so you have to get guys, when they're available. And if some fans want to be critical, I'm not going to look down at that. But to my mind, they probably have some data that's informing them. But I'm old school too. I'm 53 years old, guys. I watched the 80s. I watched the 90s. Yeah. I watched the late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s, where the game was super physical. And,
and checking and all that.
Yeah, and guys were playing 38 minutes, a night and all that sort of stuff. And but it's it's different now. It's a different game now. They play at a way faster pace than they were. I remember we all remember watching the early 90s playoff game that was 87-81 at the end of the game.
Right. Those days are definitely over. And the three ball wasn't as big as it is now today, too. It's like you had 3-point specialists, and you also had guys who were just good at shooting the three. Now you have Wemby, Jokic, you know what I'm saying? Like all these guys who are supposed to be down there in the paint. What are you doing out there on the 3-point line? Shooting it. You know what I'm saying? It's just like that was just unheard of in the 90s. 80s, 70s, you know what I'm saying? And before then, it's just like now it's just a different game. And I do believe that some things are blended, but I do believe that the new style of the NBA is really taking over. The older style is kind of more so dying out, you would say, the way of doing things. And hey, man, I can't disagree with you guys because the data people do, you know what I'm saying, read into data and analytics more than anything nowadays. And I got to kind of agree with you guys, man. That's probably what they're doing. But it won't make sense if we don't see Ricochet more, at least like you even said, Glen, 5 minutes. You know, so get him up to from 23 minutes to 28 minutes. That will be a significant jump for Zachary Ricochet. And we'll see what happens with that. You know what I'm saying, guys? Hopefully, you know what I'm saying, moving forward, we'll see more of our number one pick, especially if we're going to have injuries. You know what I'm saying? I'm not sure how long JJ is going to be out. I know honestly, he wasn't supposed to play against the Rockets either. So I had read something from like CBS that was saying that he possibly was going to be out. But, they still got to put out stuff anyway, even though the game was already postponed when it came out. So we'll see what happens with that. Got Phoenix coming up again. I'm assuming on Tuesday. I'm assuming they're just going to figure out a day to replay that Rockets and Hawks game. That was a kids' night game, too. Sorry about that for the kids, but you know what I'm saying? I'm pretty sure the Atlanta Hawks, who is a great organization, they'll find a way to get it back for you.
They will.
But, Guy, you said what now?
No, I said they will. I was agreeing with you. You know what, Chris, right quick. And by the way, Glenn, I'm 54, so I'm right there with you.
Okay.
I think the Pistons would have been suspended the entire season.
You talking about Malice in the Palace?
If they played like that. And they'd be suspended for like it was. You talk about physical. Let me tell you something.
That was something. It's so crazy. It's so crazy about that Malice in the Palace. I was sleeping, and I woke up literally 3 minutes before the foul happened that Ron Artest had did to Ben Wallace. Literally 3 minutes. I'm still rubbing crust and everything out my eye. And I'm like, hold on, what? And then I just see Ben Wallace hit him with I said, yo. So it just, man.
It's crazy. I know that era was interesting. I'll keep this quick. That era was interesting because back then, if a guy just couldn't stop an offensive player, he would just put him on the floor.
That's it.
And that to me that was like it got. I mean, some of that you appreciate some physical play, but for like a year or two, it got way too out of hand. Just
yeah.
way, like, dude, like you can't defend this guy. Like don't try to hurt him. And so
Right.
I thought it was tough to watch. For a season or two following that until the league kind of got control of that. But I mean, you had like Knicks and Pistons and other teams that were super physical. Like, okay, you're dribbling around me every time. I'm going to put my forearm right on your chin
Right
and
in your
put you on the
chest.
floor.
Right. You
Right.
And the NBA turned into NHL for a couple seasons. It felt like,
Yeah.
but we're the Wayback Machine. But
Hey, 89, 88, 89, 88. Was it 89, 88? Or 89, 90 Pistons were they were borderline. They assaulted. They literally, like Bill Laimbeer, Rick Mahorn,
Yeah.
and Dennis Rodman, Dennis Rodman at that time. They assaulted people. Like, seriously, you go through that middle if you want to, buddy. I would fear for Steph Curry with that shimmy. Oh, and that's another thing, right? When people make comparisons to Jordan and LeBron, I don't know that LeBron could have played 20 years that style of basketball because you just get beat up. You get.
No.
I mean, it was. Let me tell you something. That was when the clothesline was just. I mean, it was at its height, bro.
Calling foul.
Right.
Hey,
nowadays it's a flagrant 2 and you're gone.
Right.
Back in that era, I mean, I love watching Steph. Steph has been great for the game. But if he played in 1990, he'd got halfway through one shimmy and got something get hit in the back of the head. Like, oh, you're not doing that.
It would have changed his life.
And they're not letting him shoot all them threes either. I'm sorry, because I mean, my thing is, you'd have been able to hand check, you'd have been able to grab all that stuff like that. So a lot of that, I mean, he would have still been drawing fouls like he does now, but it just would have been a different game. They would have treated him differently. Same thing with LeBron. Now, LeBron, you can make the argument about he came in the league kind of already with some size. So, saying he was probably like, let's say, stronger than Jordan, saying that particular time, just how he came in. So he would have had to get stronger too. And you can make the argument that Braun would have started giving them something back. But hey,
I don't
at the end of the day, man, those guys, them bad boys, man, they just didn't care who you were.
They did not.
Or nothing.
Or the Knicks either. Let me tell you something. The Knicks,
Xavier McDaniel and all them.
The Bulls were a little physical, but the Knicks and the Pistons definitely.
Yeah.
Hey, man, hey, good luck with that. Pat Ewing, good luck with that. I'm just saying it was a different time. You could get away with way more.
Anthony Mason, all them guys like that.
My goodness, man. I would not want to see Anthony Mason in the dark alley.
No. Last year I read that book Chris Herring wrote, Blood in the Garden, and man, there's a lot of that stuff in that book. It's a great read.
I'll check it out.
That sounds like a great read. I'm about to see one about checking that out. The fellas, man, please, by all means, first and foremost, thank you guys for coming on, joining me, having this Hawks recap about, since the road trip, especially since, all this snow going on and they decide they want to go ahead and cancel the Hawks games. But now we definitely got to be safe, so those players, they have families and we want to continue to watch them play basketball, right? So we got to keep them safe.
Yeah, we do.
So with that being said, man, please, Mr. Glenn and T. Will, let people know where they can find you guys.
Mr. Glenn?
Yeah, ATL and 29. And if you're interested in my kind of film breakdown, I have a Patreon where I post that stuff. So you can find that link in the bio in both Blue Sky and Twitter. And do a lot of conversation. Got to have you guys on for a conversation. I post over to my Patreon, trying to bring other content creators into that space. We'll have to get that worked out as well. But hey, I just want to say, both of you, the whole team, appreciate your guys' work covering Atlanta sports. On top of it, hardworking guys, always putting thoughtful stuff out. So just want to love on you guys for a second and just say keep up the great work.
Hey man, thank you so much. It's not one thing I've realized. I know this ain't easy. So if you really want to take the time out your busy schedule to do this type of stuff, I salute everybody in front of the camera, behind the camera, because this stuff is not easy, man. It's not. people think you can just get up here and just say and hit play and everything is all good. It's not.
Yeah. It's tough.
T. Will, let them know. Let them know.
Yes, sir. Mr. Glenn, first and foremost, it's been a privilege sharing the stage with you. I appreciate you for even being on here with me. And look, you've probably forgotten more than I will ever know on this subject. So I defer to you and your wisdom. And anytime you want to have me on, or Chris and I would love to be there. I'm all over it. So thank you for that.
Man, we got to get KL on here too, man. We need to go on here and just get an old round table, man. I know he's a busy guy, man. Kevin works really, really hard, man. And he's a hard worker. I respect him. You know, I'm always checking out what I can from him, especially on Twitter when he's posting and everything. But yeah, man, I would love to get both of you guys on here. Both of you guys' thoughts, you know what I'm saying, intelligent guys. You know what I'm saying, watch every game. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, man, we're gonna have to try to set that up.
Definitely. Sounds great. I'm on a couple of shows. I'm on a few shows. I'm on One Time for the Fan. Typically, got a show tonight. It's a Falcons broadcast or podcast. Sunday night at 8, Wednesday nights at 8, Friday morning at 9 a.m. I'm on the Beard Gang Thursday morning at 10 a.m., which is, again, a Falcons broadcast. And I am on my channel, which is the number 4, My ATL Sports, the number 1 on YouTube. Say again, the number 4, My ATL Sports, the number 1 on YouTube. Typically, Monday morning, Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, Friday morning. So, yeah, hey, check me out. And again, Chris, thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Thank God I'm here. And, hey, man, on you.
Hey, man, first and foremost, man, thank you guys again for coming on here, man. And everyone who's going to watch this video, thank you guys for coming out. Make sure you check out Glen at ATL 29. Make sure you check out T. Will for My ATL Sports 1. And, of course, come on over to A1 Forever Sports, man. Be generational because there's always time to be. And don't you settle for less because you always can have more with the vision. Please like, comment, and subscribe and help us get out there into the algorithm as we're continuously trying to build this channel, being one of the best Atlanta sports channels, you know what I'm saying, bringing content to everyone within the region. Also, Twitter and Instagram, A1 Forever. Don't forget to check out my TikTok as well, the real A1 Forever. And, man, come on over. Like I said, man, like, comment, and subscribe. We'd love to have each and every last one of you people be a part of the A1 family. So for myself, T. Will, and Glenn, hey, man, let's go Hawks. We got ourselves a young team. I think we can build some things. We just got to stick by them. And until next time, peace and blessings to you, and we will.
A1. Yeah, truly. Cooler and I'm flyer too. Jam. Cooler.